Welcome back to The Explainer, everyone. I am so thrilled to have you here today because we're looking at something that feels completely ordinary, but is honestly a total miracle when you really break it down. Have you ever stopped to think about how exactly a cow takes a raw, super fibrous diet like grass and transforms it into the everyday dairy treats we absolutely crave? It is a fascinating biological journey, and today we're going to unpack exactly how it works. It is a crazy thought, right? We just open the freezer, grab a pint of ice cream, and totally take it for granted. But I want you to start thinking of a cow not just as a farm animal, but as a living, breathing, highly efficient biological factory. It takes in raw materials, processes them through a wildly complex internal manufacturing system, and pumps out this highly nutritious product. All right, so here's our roadmap for today's explainer. We're going to hit 1. The milk-making engine. 2. The lactation cycle. 3. The magic of colostrum. 4. Managing the modern herd. And finally, 5. The dairy in your fridge. Let's get into it.
Part 1. The milk-making engine. A biological marvel. Okay, so the whole thing actually kicks off with digestion. When a cow eats her feed, grass, hay, green, it doesn't just drop into a single stomach. It gets churned and broken down through 4 totally distinct compartments. First up, you've got the rumen, which is basically this massive fermentation vat. Then it moves to the reticulum, the omasum for water absorption, and finally the abomasum, which functions a lot like our own human stomach. This multi-step setup is exactly how she pulls nutrients out of really tough plant fibers that we couldn't even begin to digest. Once everything is completely broken down, it hits the small intestine. And this is where digested nutrients slip right into the cow's bloodstream. Think of them as cargo hopping on a superhighway straight down to the udder. Inside the udder, you have millions of these tiny secretory cells that grab those raw materials, amino acids, glucose, fatty acids, and literally synthesize them into milk. But the udder isn't just going rogue here. It needs a boss to tell it what to do. Enter our first major hormone, prolactin. This hormone acts like the foreman of our biological factory. Prolactin stimulates the mammary gland and signals the alveolar epithelial cells in the udder to actually start making the milk. Plus, it promotes the growth of the alveoli themselves, making sure the factory has plenty of capacity to do its job. Now, making the milk is only half the battle, right? We've got to get it out. And that is where oxytocin steps up. Released by the pituitary gland, oxytocin is the crucial trigger. It literally squeezes the milk out of those tiny alveoli, forces it through the duct system, and down into the teat cisterns. Whether a calf is suckling or the cow is stepping into a modern milking parlor, oxytocin is the absolute key to that essential milk letdown. Moving on to part 2, the lactation cycle, the 365-day engine. So cows don't just magically produce milk nonstop forever. It is totally tied to a reproductive schedule. Day 0 is calving. Then for the next 40 to 60 days, she ramps way up to what we call peak lactation, hitting her maximum volume of milk. Around days 60 to 90, she's bred again. But take a look at that last stretch, a 45 to 60-day dry period. Farmers intentionally stop milking the cow during this window. It's absolutely vital because her body desperately needs that time to rest and rebuild mammary tissue before the next calf arrives. Okay, here's a wild fact for you. To keep this engine humming at peak efficiency, the environment has to be perfect. A lactating cow actually needs 16 hours of continuous light a day, natural or artificial, doesn't matter, to keep her milk yields optimized. If she gets less light, her production simply drops. It just goes to show how insanely sensitive and finely tuned this biological system really is. Section 3. The magic of colostrum, better known as liquid gold. Right after calving, the cow drops her very first batch of milk, universally known in the dairy world as liquid gold. And the nutritional density here compared to regular whole milk is just insane. Total solids are basically double, but the real jaw dropper is the antibodies and proteins. They skyrocket from a tiny 0.09% in normal milk to a massive 6% in colostrum. Since calves are born with basically zero immune system, they completely rely on absorbing these antibodies, specifically immunoglobulin G, just to survive. And honestly, the magic doesn't stop at immunity. Colostrum is absolutely loaded with bioactive factors. We're talking 65 times more insulin and up to 155 times more IGF-1, which is a major growth factor compared to everyday milk.
These massive hormonal spikes set up the calf's long-term health, its feed efficiency, and amazingly, research shows it even dictates how much milk that calf will produce years down the line when she's a mature cow herself. Now, because it's so incredibly rich, bacteria absolutely love it just as much as the calf does. So it has to be pasteurized. But colostrum is super delicate. You absolutely cannot treat it like regular milk. It has to be heated to exactly 140 degrees Fahrenheit for exactly 60 minutes. Go even a little bit hotter, and you will literally cook and destroy those vital, life-saving IgG antibodies. And when you finally feed this liquid gold to the calf, temperature is everything. Newborns are super prone to cold stress, so this meal has to be served at precisely 102 degrees Fahrenheit. Why? Because that perfectly matches the mama cow's natural body temperature. It warms the calf right up from the inside out and guarantees they absorb as many of those vital antibodies as possible. Section 4. Managing the modern herd, balancing yield and health. To pull all of this off, modern dairy farmers rely on 4 main pillars to balance high yields with animal health. First up, genetics, breeding robust, high-yield cows like Holsteins. Second, balanced nutrition. They feed these incredibly precise total mixed rations to keep the engine properly fueled. Third is meticulous health monitoring to spot things like mastitis way before they spread. And fourth, cow comfort. Think massive fans, proper ventilation, and deep, dry bedding, because an uncomfortable or stressed out cow simply won't hit her potential. Management routine matters a ton, too. The data clearly shows that milking a cow 3 times a day instead of 2 gives you significantly more milk. But, and this is a massive but, that only works if her nutrition and comfort are absolutely flawless. If you overmilk her without bumping up her calories and care, you'll cause physical strain, tank her fertility, and completely wreck that whole 365-day cycle we just learned about. All right, final section. Section 5. The dairy in your fridge, the final output. So, I want you to take a second and just guess. When the digestion, the hormones, the active milking cycle, the management, when all of it is perfectly synced up, how much milk do you think one high-performing dairy cow can pump out in a single day? Well, get ready because the number is wild. While the industry average hovers around 8 gallons, a top-tier, well-managed cow, she's pushing out 12 gallons of milk a day. That's over 100 pounds of liquid from one single cow in just 24 hours. No way, right? Let's put that into perspective. What does 12 gallons actually look like in terms of the stuff we crave? Well, it translates to roughly 8 gallons of finished ice cream or about 12 solid pounds of mozzarella cheese. All of that from just one day of work from one cow. To make it even more relatable, think about your Friday night takeout. One single day's worth of milk from that cow can make enough mozzarella to generously top 40 large pizzas. When you step back and look at the sheer scale and efficiency of this biological factory, it is pretty mind-blowing. So the next time you grab a hot slice of pizza or dig into a bowl of ice cream, I hope you think about the incredible 300-day biological marathon that actually put it on your plate. It really makes you wonder, doesn't it? What other everyday miracles are just sitting right there, hiding in plain sight inside your fridge? Thanks so much for hanging out with me for this explainer. Keep feeding that curiosity, and I'll catch you next time.